That is one.
Is that really your house or is that a boat?
No, it's a house. No, I'm on the second story.
Oh, I'm going to say it's a hell of a boat.
What's the
Is that
first
your-
story look like?
Oh, even better. I built most of it. It's outstanding.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir.
That's that's how we know you're not Jewish.
Why is that? Because I
Why?
did it myself.
You never. I mean, I'm gonna stereotype, but most of the time you don't hear when you're speaking to a Jew and you say how beautiful their house is. They rarely say, "I built most of it." And on that note, I want to welcome everyone to the world according to that man over there, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We are joined tonight by the SimpleLifeNow.com founder, Gary, the builder.
Puckett and the Union Gap.
Sorry?
I thought it was going to be Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. Okay, never mind, never mind.
And of course, we are joined again tonight by one of our favorite guests, my mother's 2 out of 3 favorite guests on the show tonight, from 93.1, bam, the future of conservative talk radio, Rob Kendall.
Hello.
Who's I've got to tell you, Rob, your hair is coming in amazingly well. They have done fantastic work on your hair. You are a vision for hair plant, whatever they call that. And
Hair
of course,
plant, whatever they call it. That's right.
and of course, the show would not be complete without founder, Rotary Club member, lawyer, actor, provocateur, saint, sinner, father, grandfather, statistician, mathematician, lawyer, economist, but of course, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein. Hello, sir. Hello, all of you.
Hello, all of you.
Everybody looks great tonight except me.
You look great, too. You look the greatest because you're the youngest. No, wait a minute.
Rob's younger than I am. And I am in the weeds. But I really want to get to this story right away. It's this story about this police thing that happened in New York City this morning. And I sometimes I want to say I fault the police a little bit for one word. There is nothing ever routine about a traffic stop. And for police, every time they open that door, they go to that window, there's nothing routine. They don't know who they're going to be seeing or what dangers might face them. And this morning, the New York City police pulled over, as Ben would call it, an African-American freedom fighter. And he decided to get out of his car after they were checking his license, and he doused one of them. It might have been 2 separate occasions. He threw a Molotov cocktail at one and doused another one with fluids, dangerous fluids at that. And as Ben always says, as Ben Stein, as you always say, this is the stories that don't get reported enough. That this is these police officers that get nothing, paid nothing, and the reason I bring this up, I'll get right to you, Ben, is when we're driving and somebody honks us, the biggest reason most of us don't get angry or don't scream back for the most part is because we don't know who we're dealing with. Cops are no different than us. They're human beings. And Ben, when they go to that car, they're humans like us, and they're facing what we would never face.
It's a terrifying job being a policeman. And by the way, it is not as badly paid as you think it is, but it's a very, very dangerous job. It's a terrifying job. And to think that the police are painted as the villains when they are the safeguarders of this society is amazing. We are talking about defunding the police, in some way cracking down on the people who save our lives and keep society alive is astonishing. It's like saying, we're going to start beating up on a brain surgeon as he's doing brain surgery. These people are lifesavers. Why are we after them? I mean, yes, of course they make mistakes. There are hundreds of thousands of interactions between police and civilians every day, maybe millions. There are going to be some that don't go right. But in general, the police do a magnificent job. We should be magnificently grateful to them instead of beating up on them and humiliating them and making them feel scared and making them feel that their families, their wives, their husbands and children are not safe. That is outrageous. It's incredible what that's done.
And you bring up something very important about mistakes. And This is according to the Washington Post, you know, the source of all great news. Since 2015, there have been 6,200 basically people have been killed by the police. 46% of them have been white, 24% of them have been black. Okay, so when we talk about the millions of interactions police have a year with civilians, that number is minuscule, is a tiny, tiny number. Rob Kendall, I see you wanted to jump in, and then I know Gary's got an interesting story on this.
But I just think it's fascinating, and I can say this. My dad was a federal law enforcement officer and dealt with some of the worst of humanity. And every day I know his first goal was to come home. And I think that's the goal of every law enforcement officer, is to come home. And this idea that police seek confrontation for 99.9% of cases is laughable. There's nothing more than police want than to leave you alone. And this idea, I mean, we come back to what happened in Minnesota, that this woman was an exemplary officer for 25 years and then just woke up one day and decided, I'm going to try to kill an African-American. I mean, when you have to actually say these things out loud, it all falls apart, but yet the narrative continues.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Gary. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's first of all, that's an astonishingly large number of deaths. I'm really shocked at that large number. I think the really interesting statistic we're looking for is how many of the interactions, total interactions between civilians and police, are instigated by African-American freedom fighters, and what percent are they of the population? Let's say they are 13 or 14% of the population. What percent of all confrontations with officers do you think African-American freedom fighters do?
I would say you have to go by the statistic of, and I would have to say.
I once looked it up. I don't have it in my head.
I would say it's probably the same percentile.
Well, it's
between,
a very,
I
very
would
large
say,
number. It's a very, very
right.
large number. The likelihood of an African-American freedom fighter being involved in a confrontation with a police officer is dramatically higher than for a white pussy with nothing.
Gary Collins.
I don't know what to say to that. No, and I agree. I was in federal law enforcement, and I pulled people out of cars at gunpoint a couple times. And I'll tell you right now, the pucker factor for an everyday American, I can't even tell you what it is. A whole lot of things are going on in your head, and they're going on in milliseconds. I mean, it's so fast. And to think that these officers have to be and can be perfect every single time, it's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic. And what the problem is, the defund police soon turns into refund the police because crime skyrockets in those areas. And now they're talking about—
It has in every city, Gary. Every major city.
Exactly. Every major city. And the thing too is that what we see is, again, the media lighting dumpster fires everywhere. You know, they go pinpoint one instance, in like the instance of the taser, right? Is that the one you were talking about where she pulled out her gun instead of her taser? Right. There's been so many they've been going after recently, it's hard to keep them straight. Like the guy who shot the 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old fully deserved to be shot. So yeah, it was 100% a good shoot. I mean, you can't even question that one. But they will, and they do. But with the taser, it's very simple that they go, well, why would she reach for a gun? It's muscle memory. Anyone who's been in law enforcement knows we put tens of thousands of rounds in a target. And muscle memory is right hand, gun out, engage target. You do that tens of thousands of times in a high pressure situation, you're going to go back to the simplest task that your muscle memory goes to, which is gun. Deadly force, gun. It's not taser. Tasers are new. You know, you would have to do so many repetitions with a taser. And at first they were putting the taser behind the gun, in front of the gun. Now it's left-handed. People just don't understand. Most people have never even been hunting, let alone had any experience with weapons, period, or situations that require deadly force. They have no clue what they're talking about. And these reporters definitely don't.
I mean, why do we assume, let's assume, considering the data, why do we assume it's a police officer, person sworn to uphold the law, who's trained, that is the guilty person? I mean, the data is overwhelming that in the shootings in this country, only a tiny number are caused by the police. Why do we assume that the police are always the aggressors? Well, there's no data behind that at all. Why do we assume that?
Well, even with the statistics bear out that they instantly call it racist that blacks have so many more interactions with police officers. Well, those
Well,
simple
that's because they
statistics also
start the
tell you.
fights. I mean,
I know. No. What I'm saying though is just if you go by that and simple statistics, say if you have more contact with a police officer, the odds of you getting in a hostile confrontation go up too, no matter what. I don't care race, whatever. That's just statistics. That's the way it goes. And the problem is we also lack respect towards police. And I was in law enforcement. When I get pulled over, you know what I do? Hands on steering wheel. I don't make any fast moves. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes. What do you don't trust me. Obey the commands. That is what you're supposed to do. Shut up. Even if you're right, just shut up. Be quiet. You'd rather go to court and face them in court than be dead. Keep your mouth shut and obey commands. I can't make it any simpler than that.
And Gary can speak to this too.
So I just want to say one thing that's funny that Gary said, or Ben said, that data, like the left cares about data. Okay, it could be
Suits them.
Data and science only matter to the left when it fits their narrative. Let's remember that. Sorry, Ron.
No. I was just going to say, Gary can speak to this too. They teach you in law enforcement, if you hesitate, you die. I mean, this is something that nobody ever brings up, that they teach this for a reason in law enforcement. It's a split-second decision. I used to talk to my dad about this all the time about, are you worried if you have to use your weapon? And he said, no, because they've trained us that if there's a doubt, you're going to die. You've got to make a split-second decision, and you figure out later whether it's the right one or not, but you're put in a terrible, awful position. You have to make a split-second decision that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy.
Well, not only that, but as an officer, you have rules to follow. As a citizen or a gangbanger or a punk, you don't follow any rules. So it's a totally different ball game for the person, the law enforcement officer engaging someone, because you're engaging something that's a wild card every single time. But the other person on the other end of the officer knows what they're going to get, right? It frustrates me to death.
It's also kind of a status thing. It's very low status for a policeman to use his weapon and then find himself being prosecuted for unsuitable illegal homicide. Whereas among the gangbangers, it's a big mark of status. It's a great thing to use your gun. But the police don't want to use their guns. The gangbangers do want to use their guns. Just listen to the rap songs. That's all you need to do.
No, you're completely right. And I love something that Rob brought up about when they go to work that day. The last thing police officers ever want to do is paperwork, okay? The last thing anybody wants to do is paperwork, okay? And I can guarantee you that 99.999% of police officers don't want to be involved in any sort of shooting. And the problem now we're running into, Ben, is that pausing. That pausing is going to get people killed. It's the second you start to think that you're dead. And we are putting our policemen, we are putting anybody out there in a very precarious and dangerous situation right now, because we've lost all nuance. We could look at every single of these police shootings. The last one in Minnesota, the guy ran out of his car or drove away. He had a criminal record. He was being tried. He was going to be almost sentenced to 20 years in jail. We have Atlanta, where they stole the taser gun from the police. We have all these, Chicago with the gun, like as Gary said, a justified shooting. But there is no nuance with the left, Ben. That's what we've learned. There's no nuance or statistic that actually matters.
I'm fixing that. That won't happen again. May I make another comment along the same lines, the ones I've been making all evening, which is there's just a big question in my mind as to why we would assume that the police, trained to protect us, sworn to protect us, offering up their lives every day to protect us, that they would start a war with America's African American community, especially since at this point in the history of America, so very many of the police are African Americans. So why do we assume that the police are the new Ku Klux Klan? There's no, well, Judah hit this right on the head. There's no evidence of it at all, and yet it is assumed. Why? Because it makes money for Black Lives Matter and for the other people who, while pretending to be highly moral entities, are in reality either terrorist organizations or extremely close to being terrorist organizations.
But Ben, I couldn't afford a house, a $1.4 million house in Torrance as a law enforcement officer. I mean, how else would I be able to do that? I got to stir up a bunch of crap and get rich off it and say Black Lives Matter, and I'm out living in a white neighborhood.
Yeah,
Says it all
by
right there.
By the way, why is it that all these Black people talking about how horrible white people are and what a vicious racist system we have perpetrated by the white people? Why, as soon as they make money, do they want to live in white neighborhoods?
Well, not only that, but if
I
we're
don't
such a
understand
racist
that. I
country,
don't understand why, if the white people are so horrible, why don't they go back to Africa? I mean, I just don't understand. If Africa was so great and America is so awful, a lot of them have lots and lots of money. I see them in Beverly Hills. I see them in restaurants where dinner for two is $300. Why don't they go back to Africa? I don't understand. I'm not saying they should. I think it's great that we have them here with their incredibly enriching qualities. But if America's that great, why are they staying here?
Why is
well, why
anybody
are
that
people?
hates this
Well,
country
my-
so
That
much?
horrible.
Well, my
Sorry.
answer to that is simple. Why is everyone from the rest of the world trying to sneak through our borders then if we're
Right,
such racist and awful
exactly right. If America is the horrible, slimy, fascist sinkhole that AOC and the other people say it is, why is everyone in the world wanting to come here?
And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We're joined tonight by Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC. Bam! The future of conservative talk radio. Gary Collins, thesimplelifenow.com, founder, member, podcaster,
lover.
and a beautiful view tonight, and a lover, and a beautiful view tonight. But we're discussing something serious, and Rob, I know you wanted to get into this, but I'm always curious what your callers are saying about these situations, because when you get these callers, and I'm just curious what they say about these situations.
Well, first of all, I went to Cracker Barrel today where dinner for two was $30. So I got to start hanging out with Ben more often.
Ben can't afford to take you to those places anymore. Ben could afford to take you to those places before the Democrats ruined the economy. I'm just kidding.
Here's what's really interesting. So we just passed the 1 year anniversary of the death of a police officer here in Indianapolis named Breonna Taylor. And she was shot dead on the job in a hostage situation by a lunatic. And there was almost nothing outside of the basic reporting that this police officer was shot. In fact, she was denied the normal officer, funeral that you would receive because of COVID-19. And it's like the 1 year anniversary came and went. People are just like, nah. And it's like, where's the marching for her? Where's the walking for her? Where's the protesting for her? When police officers die, no one seems to care. Oh, well, no big deal. But when it happens to someone else, we see what we've seen in Chicago, what we've seen in Minneapolis. And man, again, it just comes back to, I just can't imagine why anybody would want to be a police officer anymore. I'm incredibly thankful that they are, but for what it pays and the risks you take and what you have to deal with, those aren't very good odds.
Well, I have a question I asked long ago when we had the Rodney King riots in LA long ago. Why do white people never riot? Why is that?
I didn't hear you. Sorry, say that again.
Why is it that white people in the United States of America never riot? Well, why is it that it's the African Americans who riot, not the Asians, not the Hispanics, the African American freedom fighters. Why are they the ones who are rioting? Not the people of Polish heritage, not the people of Russian heritage, not the people of Irish heritage. Why is it that it's the African Americans who are rioting? I don't understand that. I'm sure there's a reason. I don't know what it is.
It's funny that it's not funny that you say that, but it's sad that you say that because I was actually thinking about that today with the police officer as they got a Molotov cocktail thrown at them and they had, liquids, that could be really harmful liquids thrown at them. But there's not going to be any riots because of that, because people don't, it's just not in the DNA for most people to go out and loot and riot. It's just not. But I think also something that is, we've touched on this before, but as I looked at the number, there were 760 murders last year in Chicago. That's not including the shootings. They're on pace this year already to beat that number of 760 murders. And I think for people that are looking on the outside in, for people like us, white people, are looking at this and going, why is this not being spoken about? And that's the hard, it's very hard to reconcile that it doesn't matter. Those 760 people, Ben, whoever they are, have no significance to the media, have no significance to the American public, have nothing. They mean nothing.
They mean nothing unless there is some way to make money off their dead bodies. I mean, I find it so endlessly amazing that we do not celebrate the fact that we have hundreds of thousands, or well over 100,000 men and women in this country who are willing to be law enforcement officers and risk their lives every day. And we do celebrate and kneel in the aisles of Congress for a person who is a criminal and a lifelong criminal record who gets killed by accident by the police. To be sure, he should not have been killed. To be sure, I'm very glad we do have these African American freedom fighters in America, enriching our lives culturally and in so many other ways. But I am very, very sad that we do not wonder why it is that the media says it's cool if you're an African American to riot and to loot, whereas if you're a white person, it is not cool. Why is that?
Gary Collins.
Well, I've talked about this on my podcast and here as well, that if Chicago was its own country, it'd be the most violent country in the world by far. And no one's talking about that we have a rate of violence in this country that is basically the top of the food chain. No one's talking about it. No one says anything. It's not uncommon to have 20, 30 shootings in a weekend in Chicago. That's I can't even rationalize that in any stretch. But
Well,
no
I
one seems
can't.
to care.
I can rationalize it. If you took the African American freedom fighters out of the calculations, we would not have an unusually high murder rate. It's the African American freedom fighters who are doing the killing and the dying. Why is that? Why is that? I think
Well,
I don't think
sadly,
it's in the DNA at all. Somebody mentioned that it's in the DNA. I don't think it's in the DNA. I think it's that the media is encouraging them to do it, and the media doesn't die. Black people die, and I think it's very irresponsible of the media to encourage Black people to think that violence is cool when it's not cool if you're the one who's dying or getting badly injured.
Rob Kendall.
I've wondered this for a while, and Ben, you can speak to this because you've been around politics and dealing with the national media for a long time. There's no doubt that the media cheers for chaos. They love to report on
You bet.
drum it up. But I wonder this because you've dealt with these men and women for a long time, Ben. Don't they realize that they live in this country too? I mean, do they ever realize that? Because it doesn't ever seem like this bothers them, and they're manipulating people to chaos and calamity.
They don't really feel like they live in this country. They feel like they live in a stratosphere above this country. They feel like there is an America, which is the America of people who are working stiffs and go to work every day, sometimes also dressed in uniforms, carrying guns and badges. And then there's the America of the beautiful people, and that's a whole different America. And when I worked at the Wall Street Journal many, many years ago, and used to be in charge of covering all cultural events, and so that was when the Journal was a much smaller paper than it is now. I saw the beautiful people every day of the week. And the beautiful people really think they are too beautiful to be involved with America. They think they are way, way above the ordinary American, way, way above.
I mean, you both raised like great question, Rob, and great answer, Ben. And it is frightening what the media has done to our country. I mean, and we really could, last night, Chris Cuomo, that jackass. I mean, it's a family of jackasses. Said basically, he said what needs to happen is white kids need to start getting shot by police, and that will resolve this. That will resolve this issue. The issue of 8 unarmed people getting killed last year, Black people getting killed last year by police officers, will solve the issue. He basically, Chris Cuomo, said white children need to die. So, and I was thinking to myself, and that'll change the issue. Most school shootings are white kids that are getting killed, okay? That most school shootings, and it hasn't changed really our views on things, because we realize, a lot of us as a society, that these are events that are sick, but they're not the guns, they're the sick people that are committing the crimes. So this idiotic statement, once again, by another Cuomo, I don't know how Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo have, Ben, how they have jobs. It's beyond my.
Because the people who hire them think the same thing, and people who hire them think they're too cool for school too. I mean, the people who hire them think that they are above you and me by a long, long, long way, and above the ordinary citizen by a long, long, long way. And now they've reached a hand out to the powers in corporate America, and they've said, you can be part of us. We invite you to be part of the beautiful people. Yes, yes, yes. All you have to do is condemn Whitey, say that America's a racist cesspool, and you can be part of the beautiful people too. And so they do.
So turn that around, Rob. Can you imagine if Chris Cuomo would have flipped that switch a little bit and said something, as Ben always says, people with money, white people, Christians, you could knock the crap out of them. You could say whatever you want about these people. We have no rights. We're privileged. We're the privileged class, as Gary, was very privileged growing up. I don't know about your upbringing, Rob, but it's literally, can you imagine if you said that on the air?
Well, there's a total double standard. And what's really interesting is this guy from CNN that O'Keefe caught, who meets this chick on Tinder. She goes and finds this guy who works for CNN on Tinder, keeps pretending to be interested in him, and he's trying to impress this girl. So they go on like 4 or 5 dates, and he's trying to impress her by talking about what a bunch of a-holes CNN is and how they manipulate the news, and they were out to destroy Trump. And he gives up CNN and exactly what they are and what we know they all are, because he's trying to score with this chick. I mean, the media are nothing but the national media.
I didn't even know that was the whole story. That's
yes.
Great. He got catfished, Gary Collins, on Tinder.
Beautifully done.
Yeah, they found, she finds this guy, or O'Keefe did, or whoever, on Tinder, and says, go try to hook up, go try to pretend you're interested in this guy and see how much you can get him to give up. And he told everything we already knew about CNN.
Fantastic. Great super story. And it would make a great movie, except no one in Hollywood would have the cojones to make it. I'm sorry, Gary, you go ahead, please.
Well, no, it's very simple. These losers can't get laid any other way. So,
Thanks, Gary.
I laugh at these guys, they're such losers in life, and they have to play this game, and their way to play the game is to impress a girl by telling her the truth about how corrupt he is and his organization he works for. Boy, that's great. Marry that guy. See how that goes.
Start using his game. It might help me a little bit.
Yeah, but let's try. Let's try. I would like to see if we can try to go back to the idea that why is it that the real power base in this country, namely the media, and especially wealthy people in the media, are so anti-American? This is the America that made them rich. This is the America that gives their children incredibly lavish private education. This is the America that lets them have really beautiful private vacation homes with Chris Craft boats with teak decks. Why do they hate this America so much? What nuttiness is it that makes them hate this America so much? And it has to be that it seems to me it has to be that their fellows, their colleagues, their comrades say to them, we love you for doing this. We hate America too. But where does it start? Where's the chicken and the egg situation here? Where did this idea of being cool to hate America start? And I have to say, I think it started with the Communist Party in the United States at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, and it spread throughout America, and it was slightly tamed by the McCarthy era, but then it came back in a giant efflorescence in the 60s. I mean, in the 60s, people that were running things and playing games in the 60s, and I was one of them, were following a Marxist agenda, pure and simple.
It's a great question you ask, and I want everybody to answer that after this brief announcement. If you just tuned in, thank you for listening to The World According to Ben Stein. Thank you, everybody in YouTube chat. Thank you, everybody that's been downloading the podcast. It's been amazing. Remember to give a 5-star review. And also get Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com. We're joined, of course, tonight by Rob Kendall, whose hair is looking amazing from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. That's the man. And of course, Gary Collins from thesimplelifenow.com. You can read Ben at spectator.org and find him on Parler at Ben Stein. But Ben, you asked a great question. I'll answer it first because I think I'm right, because but it has to do with what you're saying, and it's the lack of God. Okay, when you don't believe in God, this country is the greatest thing in the world. It offers people so much. It offers everybody a chance at something special, and when you get those special things, if you don't believe in a greater in a higher power, you can't accept the good that's been given, because if you don't believe it, then it's just luck. It's like a spinning wheel, and it could be taken at any moment, and you have no joy in that because you don't believe in something. It's like the difference between people that say they're lucky and blessed. And I could say that most people that are communists and Marxists and all these people don't believe in God, don't have a higher power. Their higher power is themselves. And that's who you're describing. These people, then, the media, believe they're gods. Okay?
Well, in many ways in this country, they are gods, although there is only one God.
But that's my answer to your question. I'll go for it.
That's a scary answer. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things the left has done very well over the past, I don't know, I guess 40 years or so, is dominate the public education sphere. I mean, let's face it, they have done a wonderful job, even in Republican areas, of getting far left people controlling public education, through both teaching and administration in many cases. And you have a group of people who grow up thinking that America is unjust, it was unjustly founded, it's awful, it's horrific, it's terrible. Not that there need to be reforms done to it. And this is the scary part. Not that reforms need to be done. They believe America is wholly awful from its inception, and the only way to fix it is tear it down and start all over again in their image. And so when you have generations now of people,
again, them believing they're God, you're describing all ways. And that's always why I hated that term nation building, or building a country to be like us.
You're overwhelming your audio.
Sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
No, you're good. The audio is the problem with the audio.
You couldn't hear me, or was too loud?
I could hear, but it was all blurry.
I'm sorry. Basically, what I was saying, Rob, is you're defining what people believe they're God. You know, these are people that truly believe they're God.
Scary, very scary. Gary, from your yacht, tell us what you think.
Well, I think there's a couple pieces to it, and this is just me observing and being around a lot of these people, protecting them and intermingling with them in the government, and having to be around their little parties and stuff. First of all, these are the people who usually have never been punched in the face. Honestly, they've never been in a fight. They've never had to fight for, their freedom. They never served their country. They've never worn a uniform. They're pussies, and they've been coddled their entire life, and they feel that they're more important than you, even though they've never done anything to be more important than you. It's a weird psychopathy that's hard to explain. It's very narcissistic in its kind of stems from, but it goes further than that, because it kind of funnels into, it's a God complex. that I know better. If you just do what I say and were like me, this would be a better place, but they don't have any skin in the game. It's like AOC and people. I got an email saying I'm hard on her, but I am, because she's an idiot.
You see, you have
And
a
she's been
hard on
coddled
for
she's been coddled her entire life. And when you get someone who's been coddled their entire life and you're 28 and you got a college degree and you're still working in a bar, that tells me you're a fucking idiot. Sorry. But I hope I didn't get us in trouble. But I mean, come on. And then she's a congresswoman, and you hear the things that come out of her mouth. That's because she's a nobody. She's a loser who ended up in power. Losers in power, this is how they act. I saw it firsthand. And there's no way to control them because it's unbridled. I mean,
she's not a loser anymore. She's the puppeteer, and Mr. Biden is the puppet.
You know why she is a loser? Because she's miserable. And I consider that.
You don't know that she's miserable. She may be as happy as a lark.
She looks awfully angry to me.
Well, people look, Nancy Pelosi looks incredibly miserable, but I bet she isn't. I mean, she should be miserable, but I bet she isn't. I mean, but let's.
No, she's got a lot of ice cream, Ben. She's got good ice cream and big freezers.
And a great hairstylist.
Yeah.
Rob Kendall, we interrupted you for a second, so sorry.
No, I do think this is interesting, though. We talked about this on Friday on the air. Pelosi's got a real problem now because Pelosi is a far left liberal, but she also understands the confines of trying to get liberalism accomplished through legislation and keeping a majority. And now she's dealing with people. It's like when Bane takes over in Batman. Yeah, you harness the power of a lunatic to grow your numbers. Now you got to deal with these people. And I think she's finding out real quickly, like with Nadler and Markey and those guys putting forward this plan to expand the Supreme Court. You saw it with the Green New Deal. She doesn't want any part of this because she knows how the public will respond, but she has lunatics like AOC and Nadler and the rest of the squad, et cetera, that are now the most vocal and the most out there and the representation of her party. It's a big problem for her.
It's a giant problem for the whole country. I mean, but just think of it. We basically, as a country, now have the government run, not entirely, but in very large measure, by a bunch of Valley girls. Now, many of you are too young to remember Valley girls, but it's basically by a bunch of gossipy teenage girls. Now, only these ones are ultra leftist teenage girls and kind of wacky and incredibly uneducated. And that's who's running a country now. I mean, it's terrifying to think who's running a country.
Which brings me to the next point, and I want to get to this, Ben, and which it's something you posted on Parler today, and we posted it twice, but it's one of my favorite, to the Republicans, silence like a cancer grows, right? To quote the great Simon and Garfunkel. Yes. The great Simon and Garfunkel, and it is metastasizing at warp speed in the Democrat Party. This cancer that they are bringing on this country right now is in warp speed. What they're trying to do with legislation, what they're trying to do with executive action, Ben, is right.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wifey and I were just coming back from dinner, and I said that I was feeling kind of sad, and I said, this has been some year. We had a media coup, a savage, dishonest media coup against the president, who was doing a perfectly fine job. A savage, vicious media coup, basically assassinated him character-wise. Then we had COVID. Then we had COVID used as an excuse to shut down the human. Of course, we need to take drastic action to curtail it. But to seal up the human personality for a year, for more than a year, that seems like, to me, a bit much. But all of this has happened. And we had this very bad economic contraction, and now we're having an economic expansion. We're on the road to having serious inflation. And I was about to say, but look, we rolled on and things are fine, but things aren't fine. I mean, yes, I had a very good dinner tonight. Yes, I had crab cakes, one of my favorite foods. Yes, I had a very good dinner tonight. But we are losing the freedom of speech very fast. The courts are being corrupted very, very fast. We have the Department of Justice essentially being run as a Gestapo against conservatives who are just doing no more than sightseeing in the Capitol. That's this country has not come through this unchanged. This country is a country where there are people in fear. I have been alive longer than any of you, and I think I've never seen Americans in so much fear, because we fear our own government now. I have not known Americans to fear their own government ever in my lifetime until the last few months.
As you would say now, I'm frightened, Rob Kendall.
It's fascinating, the rapid descent of America, isn't it? I mean, it's
terrifying.
It's a bizarre thing where it was like Democrats pretended to hate Republicans, Republicans pretended to hate Democrats, but as long as it was one of their guys around the margins, whether it was Clinton or Bush or even to extend it Obama, who talked a big game, but in terms of actual policies, there wasn't that much difference. Trump comes along and these people freak out because they're like, holy smokes, people are paying attention now and they're sick of our bull crap. And it's like they completely freaked out and they have hit overdrive in terms of completely destroying America and ensuring that freedom and liberty loving people never hold public office ever again.
Gary, somebody in the chat.
It's even deeper than that. I think it's even deeper than that. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to say, Gary and Ben, somebody in the chat said they want to cancel half of America. I actually think some of them want to kill half America, Gary.
I think they do. So,
if you gave them the power, they absolutely would. And I worked with people like this, and we used to call it eating their own. Because one day you're their friend, their best friend, and the next day they're trying to basically fire you. It was something very interesting to watch working in the government, to watch people like this turn on. Eventually they turn on each other, which is funny to watch, actually. But they hunt. We call them hunters because they're not good at anything. They're very untalented in general, but what they're good at is hunting other people and ruining their lives. That's what they're good at. And and this is the sad part, is they get their rocks off on it. That is how they actually live their life and what entertains them. It's the strangest thing. I can't explain it to people. It's the weirdest thing to watch in person because it makes absolutely no sense. None. But it's because, again, they have no skin in the game. They're talentless. They have nothing going for them. So why not make everyone else miserable just like you? Why not? That's how it kind of works.
Oh, Gary, my dear friend, with your wonderful huge yacht on that body of water, my dear friend, they have plenty of skin in the game. They have risen to the top of the pyramid of power in this country, and they're all going to be rich. And by the way, when you guys talk about one of the Black Lives Matter founders having a $1.4 million or $1.8 million house, that's just the beginning. I mean, these people are raking in tens of millions. There's no limit to what they can get if they play that guilty white liberal string often enough. It's going to be a bloodbath of money pouring in on them, and they're going to use it to get even more money and to get even more power, because the thing they can play on, telling Americans that we're racist, they can play on that indefinitely.
Oh, Ben, what I meant is
are so stupid. Not us, but the American liberals are so stupid. They don't get the fact that America is the least racist country in the world.
What I meant by that, Ben, they have no skin in the game. They have no skin in the game in the blood for freedom. They've never had to fight for their own freedom. We're the people who fight for them, and yet they want to destroy us. It's purely ironic. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing. I laugh at some of them because I go, if it wasn't for me, you can't even act like the jackass you are. You know, I'm the one who protects those freedoms and have most of my life, and you're attacking me. And you couldn't even act that way if it wasn't for people like us doing this for you. It's makes your head explode. You just, yeah.
Can I piggyback on what Gary said? Because I say this quite a bit on the air, and Gary, I'm probably going to steal this clip for our show on Monday because it's nice to hear somebody else say it for once. When I worked under Pence as state pharmacy board director when he was governor, I saw this where people talk a good game publicly, but you get in there and you try to make actual government reforms, and you quickly realize there's a huge group of people who claim to be conservative or have an R next to their name, but they're invested in the hamster staying on the wheel. because as long as people think they need government, those people not only have jobs, they have security and power. So if you reform the government and show people how little government they actually need, then those people are out of jobs and out of positions of power. And it's just nice to hear somebody else say something like this for once.
You raise a great point, because the other day, Joe Biden, the schmuck, and being nice, he said to government employees, we'll give you 4 months, what was it, 4 months off if you take in migrants. So he's basically, so he basically said those most of those people aren't doing jobs that are needed. Forget about essential. I mean, you talk about waste. I mean, and when we look at what's going on in this country right now, nobody's running the country right now. Thank God for certain great governors, because our elected officials in the House and the presidency or whatever are doing zilch. And
well, they'd like to do something. They'd like.
Yes, but imagine if we didn't have strong Republican governors been around the country right now, who have pretty much saved the economy by not listening to Dr. Death and Dr. Doom, Fauci, who, if it was up to him, he's the guy that wears 7 condoms,
What?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, he would, yeah. Anyway,
And he still got pregnant. Oh, never mind.
Right, right. But Ben, I mean, it's really frightening. And somebody, and this is to what I said the other night, and we didn't touch upon it enough. For years, Ben was on a show and made the show. I could say he made the show. Everybody knows Ben from certain things, but the greatest show that Ben was ever on, and that he did, in my humble opinion, was Cavuto on Fox. Okay, no, I loved it. I used to love going to watch you tape it. I loved it. It was so much fun. And at the end of every show, they would make fun of Ben, because they would ask Gary and Rob, they would say, what are you investing? Give us your picks. And every week, Ben, and this was when the market maybe was at 10,000 or whatever, Ben would always say, invest in the Dow and invest in the SPY.
Just buy the market.
And buy the market. And everybody would laugh at him and make fun. Like, he was like, come on, man, pick one stock. And Ben never would. And I really think that we need to start looking, Ben, at, instead of the RNC, and we need to really start finding candidates that we could cherry pick, that we could donate to them, and not the RNC, because the RNC has truly let us down. And
sorry, but that's a huge. I mean, the market performs the function of valuing the securities of the market in an extremely complicated way, and there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people working on it. It would be awfully hard for the ordinary American to do that, but we might as well give it a try. But I first of all, thank you very, very much for those kind things you said. It was a lot of fun doing the show, and God bless all the people I was on with. I wonder, what will it take once COVID is done, and once people don't have to be hiding themselves behind masks and so forth, and once people can go back to work, what will it take for people to realize, A, as Robert and Gary said, that we have more government than we need, and B, that it's a total fraud that America is a racist country, that giant fraud is what enabled Mr. Biden to be elected and what gave us a Democrat Congress, at least for 2 years. That is, once we realize that is a giant fraud, then it seems to me we have a real chance at turning back and going along with the greatness of America.
Also, I think, and I'll let Rob get in on this, we have the data now that the Russian thing was a hoax with the bounties on the troops. We know for sure there are going to be 6 or 7 other stories that come out in the next year that were absolute hoaxes that were perpetrated on the president, from Dominion machines to the mail-in ballots to a lot of other things. And I can guarantee you the independent voter in this country, Rob, is going to start looking at this stuff, especially people like Fauci, and listen. And I pray they start looking at this going, what the hell did we listen to?
Well, real quick, I wanted to say my grandparents, who are now no longer with us, had 2 favorites on Fox News with Cavuto. One, my grandmother loved Wayne Rogers, and she'd always used to say, he's a millionaire. Listen to him. And my grandfather loved Ben Stein. So those were my two.
Oh, God bless.
Grandma and Grandpa Kendall loved Wayne Rogers and Ben Stein.
God bless you. You're very, very kind.
So when do people wake up, right? Because it always seems like throughout American history, certainly recently, that's why we have the pendulum of Republicans and Democrats back and forth, because people usually hate both sides equally, and they realize these people can't solve the problems, so they go to these people. These people don't solve it, so they go to these people. At what point does the average person, does the suburban soccer mom wake up and go, holy smokes, we've, because of our own guilt in many cases, unleashed a bunch of lunatics on this country? I don't know when that is.
Lunatics and losers.
Gary knows a lot about soccer moms. So Gary, can you answer that question?
Oh boy, we don't want to open that can of worms. But I agree. What it is, I call it, there's muscle memory in America too. And what we're seeing is a large part of the population has muscle memory of indoctrination. Repetitive tasks done over and over and over again. You see it. It's Groundhog Day for most Americans. They do the same thing. They wake up at the same time. They have the same cup of coffee. They watch the same news program. They believe everything they're told. And I think part of it is a loss of also that having a lack of a moral conscience is okay. It's not okay. And they think because their politicians do it, because big business does it, that it's okay for them to do it too, and them to act that way. And that's what I mean by it's repetition, repetition, repetition. This country was built upon the foundation of freedom of the individual. Now what we're seeing is the mindset of a broken collective. That's the problem. They don't understand individual freedom. They don't. And most Americans don't understand it either, because they're part of this ridiculously stupid collective that makes absolutely no sense. The biggest problem, they don't think for themselves. They don't understand how to be an individual and act on their own behalf of protecting their own freedom. They don't get it. They don't understand it. Just give me my Starbucks, give me my Walmart, give me my shit on my front porch from Amazon every day that I don't need. That's all I care about. And my 24 pack of Hot Pockets. That's all I care about. Don't mess with anything else. So, I mean, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing Rome. That's what we're seeing.
Well, if that's true, we're in real trouble. We're in really serious trouble. I mean, that's really, really scary. I hate to say that. That's terrifying. I mean, that is not the way my wife and I live our lives. And I have very close friends from all over the world. Some from the Far East, some from the northern Midwest, and from all over the country. And I don't think they see the world quite that way either. I think that they see the world as a place that challenges them, and that they have to exert their maximum muscle memory in their brain to overcome. And we have overcome this. We have faced terrible problems in this country before. The Civil War was a far worse problem than this. It wasn't really a civil war; it was a war between the states. So it was a far worse problem than what we're going on now. And Abraham Lincoln was a far worse suppressor of basic human liberties than Biden or any of his Democrats were. But we need to teach Americans this basic idea. And I guess I'm the only one old enough to remember this. We were taught to be incredibly proud of being Americans. My sister and I went to this wonderful elementary school called Parkside Elementary School. We were taught to be incredibly proud that we were Americans, and we were the luckiest, most blessed people in the world by being in the United States of America, and that we had problems, absolutely, but that we would fight and fight and fight to make things better. Why? What? It was the communists, I think, who started teaching faculty to teach children, no, America is a racist swamp. And somehow that idea got across, and somehow that has to be turned around. And I think even ordinary citizens like us are doing our little best to do it. I mean, we're so lucky we have this forum to be able to do. We thank Judah for making it possible, for arranging it, and for making it happen. We're incredibly lucky we can do it. Just if we could get across to Americans in general that there used to be terrible, horrible, disgusting slavery in this country, and that it was eradicated by the blood of 500,000 or 600,000 American white men who gave their lives to end slavery. And if we could get that idea across, even that would be a gigantic beginning in rehabilitating the image of America in the brains of Americans.
So you raise both. Everybody's just raised amazing points tonight, and we could go on about this forever. But I think when we have this immigration crisis that's going on, we're going to have an inflation. We might have an inflation crisis that goes on. Everything is more expensive at the stores. Cases of soda have gone up $2. Everything has gone up, and you've noticed it when you're shopping. Gas, everything. And I think when people really start to look at what we're doing with these spending bills, how when they talk about infrastructure and you have 1 million bridges to nowhere, I think people will start to get fed up and say, you know what, enough of this propaganda, enough of this, all this pork barrel, right? Enough of this stuff, Rob. And people are going to be like, I'm hungry. I can't afford this. Screw you and your messaging. This is enough.
Yeah, I think if we start getting a big dose of inflation and people realize that the government is behind it, that's going to help. I'm sorry, Rob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, people are seeing it right now, and they don't even know they're seeing it. I don't know how the real estate market is where you guys are at, but houses here in central Indiana are selling for astronomical numbers. Like in some cases, $100,000 above what the assessed value of a home is. And if you're trying to buy a home right now, it's incredibly difficult because you can't get a loan for the price of the home, which means you have to bring a huge portion of cash to the closing because the prices are going for such a ridiculous amount. And I was talking to a realtor the other day, and she was saying, people are starting to feel it. They don't know why they're feeling it, but they know they're feeling it right here in this very specific area of the economy. And people are going to start feeling it in other areas. It's just math in food prices, in terms of entertainment, whatever it is. Unfortunately, people have to feel pain before they wake up and realize, wow, this isn't a very good path that we're on.
And Mrs. Pelosi and Mr. Schumer and Mr. Biden and Mrs. Harris are just pouring gasoline on the fire as if there were no end of money and inflation can't happen. I mean, I'm older than all of you guys. I've seen it happen before. No, there's no problem until suddenly it explodes.
And I've told you before, you're not old, you're just elderly. Gary, come on, laugh. Gary, last thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in the same area. I'm in an area that is, I'm in the poorest county of Washington, and traditionally this is a property market that does not go up, period. It's pretty flatline. There's not a lot of jobs here, not a lot of money, and it is out of control. We had 6 houses for sale in the entire county on Friday, according to a friend of mine. Idaho, as Ben knows, being someone who knows Sandpoint, that Idaho is even way more out of control. Then in Montana, they're buying land sight unseen and not knowing you can't build on it, you dummy. And people are putting money down to contractors to build a house 3 years out. I'm going to give you a very good warning, people. You never give a contractor money to build a house 3 years from now. You're never going to see that money again, or a house. So don't do it.
The contractor. I love how somebody thinks, by the way, I'm laughing because somebody in the chat said, I live in Ben's garage. I'm not living in Ben's garage, nor am I high, nor if I was in Ben's house, would he allow me to get, I don't know where that, but thank you for thinking that highly of me. I'm in the Amazon.
My house has an indoor forest.
My God, his house is a lot of things, but an indoor forest is not one of them. And we are running out of time. Ben, if you could say out loud how much you love Rob Kendall, he would.
The greatest.
You need to say it.
I need what?
Say it.
Rob Kendall is the greatest. Anybody that has the privilege of listening to him is a very lucky man or woman or fluid gender or whatever they are. They are darn lucky that they have him. Darn blessed. We love him.
So here's what I'm going to do, Judah. My co-host is going to be out, not this coming week, but the week after. And so when she's away, I get to dictate everything that goes on the air. I'm going to do a whole hour with Ben Stein when she's gone. A whole hour on the Mock and Rob show.
There we
Okay.
That would be the greatest.
What time day is it, sir? What time? Oh, we can tape it.
Yeah, we'll tape it because I know you don't get up before 3 p.m, Ben. We'll work around you. Don't worry.
That would be the greatest hour of Indiana since Jimmy Chitwood hit that game-winning shot. And again, if you just tuned in, that's a Hoosier reference. If you just tuned in, you are listening and have been listening to The Wonderful World According to Ben Stein. And I didn't acknowledge, Gary, your amazing Rush shirt. It is awesome. And if you're down, you're depressed, listen to some Rush. And Gary, tell people where they could find you.
thesimplelifenow.com.
Go there. Rob Kendall, tell people how they could stream, because you can stream your show.
Weekdays 9 to noon Eastern time, the Mock and Rob show, WIBC.com.
It's a fantastic show. People listen to Rob. He is the future, as I say, he's the future of conservative talk radio. He's the future of conservative talk radio. He's everything that's good about the where we're headed. And of course, you could find Ben. Sorry, Rob.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to see my dad tomorrow. I'm sure he's watching right now. What Ben just said, I'm going to play it on a loop the whole time I'm over there tomorrow.
I could see you saving every compliment that's ever been paid to you, and you just have it on loop in your apartment. You put it on loop on the air. You just have compliments every day. You have Trump saying "my close friend" or whatever you got going on there. Of course, you can find Ben Stein on Parler at Ben Stein. You can also find him at spectator.org. I encourage everybody to read there. If you have a few extra shekel in your pocket, donate to the spectator.org. They could really humbly use it. And I want to thank everybody that's been listening tonight. We know you have a lot to do in your Saturday nights, and it's greatly appreciated. Remember to download the podcast, give it that 5-star review. We will see you Tuesday night. Ben, would you like to take us out?
Well, hard-headed woman, soft-hearted man, been the cause of trouble ever since the world began. Oh, yeah. Ever since the world began. Oh, hard-headed woman, been a thorn in the side of man.
Amen. God bless everybody. Have a great night. We will see you Tuesday night. Thank you.